If you're not happy with your life, something has to change. That may sound obvious, but it's one of the truths we resist the most. Deep down, many of us want our lives to change without having to change ourselves. We want better health, but we don't want to change our habits. We want better relationships, but we don't want to change how we communicate. We want more peace, but we don't want to change what we tolerate. We want a different life, but too often we keep living the same way. And then we wonder why nothing changes. Welcome to the Way of Permanent Transformation. My name is Stanley Bronstein, and today we're talking about concept number 4 from The Way of Excellence, embracing change. Because if you want your life to change, something has to change. And most of the time, that change has to begin with you. There are two types of people in this world: those who embrace change and those who fear change. Which one are you? Actually, it almost doesn't matter which one you are right now, because either way, the question is still the same. What needs to change? Not who's to blame, not why life is unfair. What needs to change? That question cuts through a lot of noise, so let's start identifying things that may need to change. If I asked you to make a list of how someone else should change, you could probably do that pretty quickly. You can see their bad habits, their excuses, their patterns. But if I asked you to make a list of how you need to change, that might be harder. And if I asked you what you're actually willing to do about those changes, it might get harder still. That's human nature. We're often very good at seeing what needs to change in other people, but not always so good at admitting what needs to change in ourselves. The Way of Excellence is designed to help you overcome that, because excellence does not begin with pretending. It begins with honesty, and then it continues with change. The biggest room in the world is the room for self improvement. There's always room for us to improve, always. But here's the catch: your life will not improve until you begin to change. Your health will not improve until you begin to change. Your habits will not improve until you begin to change. Your future will not improve until you begin to change. Life is not solid, it's fluid. It moves, it changes. And whether we like it or not, change is the new normal. Here's another truth: everything stays the same until it changes. That creates the illusion that change is not happening. Day after day, things may appear the same. And then one day, something catches up with you. One day, the doctor says something you didn't want to hear. One day, the stress becomes too much. One day, the relationship reaches a breaking point. One day, you look in the mirror and realize years have passed. And suddenly, what seemed like it was staying the same was actually changing all along. It was just changing quietly. That's why we can't wait until life forces change upon us. We need to choose change before we're forced into change. Change can occur in the blink of an eye, but usually only if you're ready. There comes a moment when something clicks. You stop lying to yourself. You stop waiting. You stop pretending you have forever. And you say, enough. Something has to change. But here's the part most people miss: saying something has to change isn't enough. You have to change something. That is where growth begins, because change is a necessary element of growth. Change equals growth. No change equals no growth. You can't become healthier while continuing unhealthy patterns. You can't become stronger while avoiding every challenge. You can't become more peaceful while feeding chaos. You can't become excellent while clinging to the same patterns that created the life you say you no longer want. Here's another important truth about change: temporary change creates temporary results. Permanent change creates permanent results. If you want permanent results, you have to make permanent changes. I had to learn that one the hard way. Many people change for a week or a month or just long enough for the pressure to ease. Then they drift back into old habits and wonder why the old results return. But old patterns create old results. New patterns create new results. That is why this channel is called the way of permanent transformation, not temporary motivation, permanent transformation. And permanent transformation requires permanent change. If we do not change, we stagnate. And when we stagnate, we begin to decay. That truth applies to people, families, businesses, communities, and even countries. Any system that refuses to change eventually becomes weak and ineffective. The same is true for us as individuals. If we stop growing, learning, and improving, something inside us begins to shrink. We may still be functioning, but functioning is not the same as living an excellent life. Existing is not the same as becoming, and staying the same is not the same as transforming. So, what do you do if you fear change? You change your mindset about fear. You stop treating fear as a stop sign. Sometimes fear is simply pointing at the exact place where growth is waiting to happen. Fear says, don't try, don't risk, don't change. Stay where it's comfortable, stay where it's familiar. But comfort can become a cage, familiar can become a prison, and safe can become stagnant. At some point, you have to decide, are you going to forget everything and run, or are you going to face everything and rise? No one else can make that decision for you. Until number 4 from the way of excellence is called Until We Embrace Change. It says, until we stop fearing change and start embracing it, we're never going to achieve our maximum potential and evolve as a species. Bring that down to your own life. Until you stop fearing change and start embracing it, you will never reach your maximum potential because your next level requires a different version of you, a more honest version, a more disciplined version, a more courageous version, a more responsible version. If you want to change your life, change something. If you want to change your health, change something. If you want to change your relationships, change something. If you want to change your future, change something. Something has to change. And most of the time, that change has to start with you. Law number 4 from the way of excellence is called the law of change. It says, everyone wants change, but few are willing to change. That's not the way it works. Change requires work. If one wants to see changes in their life and in their world, they're going to have to change first. Change starts with you. That's the heart of this message. Everyone wants change, but few are willing to change. We want the result without the discomfort, the reward without the discipline, the new life without releasing the old patterns. But change requires work. And if you want to see changes in your life, you're going to have to change first. Change starts with you, not your spouse, not your boss, not the government, you. Your power begins when you stop waiting for everything else to change first. So, how do you begin? You tell it like it is. You admit what's going on. You stop pretending not to know what you already know. Then you take action. Maybe you need to change what you eat. Maybe you need to change how you spend your time. Maybe you need to change your habits. Maybe you need to change your standards. Maybe you need to change your environment. Start there. Pick one thing, one change you already know you need to make, and begin. Change is not just about fixing problems, it's also about uncovering potential. You are not here merely to survive your life. You're here to grow, to contribute, to become. Somewhere inside you, there is more than you have been expressing. More strength, more discipline, more courage, more possibility. But you will not discover that version of yourself by standing still forever. You discover it by moving, by exploring, by changing, by growing. That is part of what happened to me when I started my own journey. I spent countless hours walking by myself. And you know what happens when you walk by yourself for countless hours? You meet some pretty interesting people. And the most interesting person you meet is yourself. You start seeing your own patterns. You start realizing what you've been avoiding. You start understanding what needs to change. That kind of honesty can be uncomfortable, but it can also be freeing because once you see the truth, you can respond to it. Once you know what needs to change, you can begin changing it. Benefit number 4 from the way of excellence is called living in a world that's constantly improving. By incorporating law number 4, the law of change, into our lives, we will be creating a society that encourages constant and never ending improvement as opposed to one that fears it or discourages. I would much rather live in a world that's constantly improving than one that is stagnating or getting worse. But that world begins with us. One person embracing change, one person improving their health, one person improving their habits, one person improving their life, then another, and another. That is how transformation spreads. That is how a better world begins. So here's the challenge. Look at your life honestly, not with shame, not with blame, but with honesty. Ask yourself, where am I unhappy? Where am I stuck? Where am I tolerating something I know needs to change? And then ask the most important question. What is one change I'm willing to begin making now? Not someday, now. Because if you're not happy with your life, something has to change. And if you want permanent transformation, that change has to become more than a temporary reaction. It has to become a new way of living. That's the way of permanent transformation. If this message speaks to you, please like this video and subscribe to this channel. New videos are released on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And you can learn more or contact me at my website, thewayofexcellence.com.